Many of you remember Lieutenant Michael Behenna, who did his job heroically by killing a known al-Qaeda operative while serving in Iraq because they had just killed two of his men. In other words, he was brave enough to go to fight to begin with. Then he did his job, and as a result of it, a kangaroo court was held, and a panel of 7 military officers, none of whom had combat experience, convicted this heroic Lieutenant Behenna of unpremeditated murder and assault, and convicted him and gave him a 25-year sentence in prison for killing one of our Islamo-fascist enemies. Well, many of you were outraged, as was I. We did what we could, and then we forgot the case. I'm sorry to say we forgot the case. And there's someone who didn't forget his case, and that's his family. And joining us right now is his incredibly brave mother. It must have taken a great toll on her. Vicki Behenna, so glad for you, and thank you for being back with us on the Savage Nation.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here and thankful that I can finally give some good news.
Vicki, how did this come about that your son is going to be released? How did this happen?
Well, you know, we've been, for the past 5 years, going through appeals. I mean, it's been an incredibly long process. Michael's case went all the way up to the Supreme Court last year and was denied. And so we had a parole hearing in January. And, you know, keeping our fingers crossed and saying a lot of prayers, we asked the board to release Michael. I mean, he's no threat to society. And we just heard on Wednesday that they've agreed to go ahead and grant his request for parole.
Oh, thank God. And this is odd in that it's coming to us under the Obama administration. Isn't that odd?
Well, you know, I don't know. I know the politics were at work. I don't know exactly who makes the decision. I do think it's higher than the board, the policy and review board in the Army. But I don't care how it came down. I'm just so grateful it did. And
Are you sure this is really going to happen?
Well, you know, I'm kind of holding my breath, and while I've been nothing but giggly and bubbly since I heard news on Wednesday, you know, he doesn't get released until the 14th. And
yeah, I don't want to say anything that might, you know, in any way endanger this release, because we want to wait until he is out. How many years has he been behind bars?
It'd be 5 years in March.
And his wife, and he had a child, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
He did not. No, thank God. And Shannon and Michael never got married. I mean, she still remains his girlfriend. She still goes and sees him.
Wow.
He's still there.
5 years in one of the worst prisons in America, which is Leavenworth. Al-Qaeda is treated better at Guantanamo than he was treated, by what I've read. How much money did this cost your family, Vicki? Let's cut to the chase here. This must have cost you an awful lot of money.
It's incredible. I mean, you can imagine going all the way up to the Supreme Court, the kind of people and lawyers you have to hire to do that. But, I mean, we're most grateful to you in particular on that, because you were so instrumental and helpful in your listeners and getting us some money to help us go through the appeal.
Well, Vicki, do you still have a defense fund where my listeners can send donations to help Michael now that he's coming out, and to help you restore some of the money that you had to use to get him out?
We do, and we've established a New Start Fund, is what we're calling it, for Michael, to kind of help him get on his feet. I mean, obviously, he's got to buy clothes, he's got to have a car, he's got to have an apartment.
God.
And so, yes.
What is the email? Tell it to me. I'll put it on my website.
It's www.defendmichael.com.
Defendmichael.com, and we can make donations right there?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to make a donation the minute the show is over. I mean, I am so happy. I never thought that they would reverse this, because these bureaucracies, once they make a mistake, they usually never reverse themselves. It's almost like a divine intervention. But it's the mother. It's you. You didn't stop. It's his girlfriend who never stopped believing in him. Why should they? Your son is an American hero, Vicki. Here is a young man who joins the military after 9/11 to fight battles for this country, and look what happened to him.
Yeah, it's inconceivable to me. I mean, a lot of people told me, how do you keep fighting and why you keep fighting? And I said, well, you know, it was an injustice here. And it's not just an injustice because it happened to my son, but how in the world do we expect to send soldiers and combat Marines into combat zones and not support them? They're going to make decisions that the general public's not going to like, but you don't incarcerate them for the decisions that they make.
Lieutenant Behenna, by the way, received this call to serve his country while attending the University of Central Oklahoma. And by the way, he comes from a family of public servants. The woman you are listening to, if I'm not mistaken, Vicky Behenna, was an assistant U.S. attorney. Is that correct?
That's right, until November of last year, yes.
And his father was a retired special agent with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. And look what they did to an American hero. Look what happens when a military gets out of control. When was he sentenced? Excuse me, when did this event occur? What year, Vicky?
The shooting incident occurred in May of '08.
Now, when was the court-martial? Was it under Bush? Was it under the Bush years?
He was charged under Bush and went to trial the first part, in February of '09, just after Obama came into office.
But we begged Bush to intervene. I went on the show over and over again and begged George Bush to intervene and overturn this injustice. He did nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And I don't understand how people can't get outraged by this, that it seems to me there's something very wrong here. When George Bush, who in fact sent these men to war, wouldn't even go to bat for the young men who went to war for us.
Right. And, I think I would have understood it had Michael, there was a sergeant that went out in Afghanistan and killed 12 people just randomly. I think I would have understood people's desire not to touch Michael's case if it involved facts like that. But everybody knows, the Army knows, that the man that Michael shot was a member of Al-Qaeda, and the man was coming toward Michael to take his weapon from him to use it against him. How in the world you can charge a soldier for a shooting incident and convict him of murder is just beyond me. I don't understand.
Now, didn't they then, after they convicted your son and put him in Fort Leavenworth, didn't they release this terrorist, Mansour?
Well, he's dead. But they have released many terrorists.
Wait, it says in May of '08, without explanation, Army intelligence ordered the release of Mansour. Was he released at that time?
Well, that's right, and I didn't get the timeline. I apologize for that. Okay, so let me there's an April...
Oh, I'm sorry, he was released. I get it. That's when Behenna was taking him back to his home. I get it. That's what happened. I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And in the struggle in the car, when this terrorist tried to overpower your son and take his gun, your son fired a weapon and killed him. That's what happened, right?
That's exactly right. And the forensic evidence supports Michael's claim of self-defense. It's not just Michael saying it was self-defense. The forensic evidence supports it.
Now, how could a panel of 7 officers, none of whom had combat experience, have convicted your son? What do you mean? What are they what are they doing on panels if they don't even know what combat is all about?
Well, I think that first of all, that's a great question. But secondly, I think juries make mistakes when they don't get all the evidence. Remember, that was the first thing that we had in Michael's case is that the government prosecutors withheld evidence that their own expert agreed it was self-defense.
Yes, they withheld evidence in order to railroad your son. Well, look, I'm going to do this as often as I can. www.defendmichael.com. I don't want to impose on him or on you in any way. And it's not for ratings. It's just that, God, we want to apologize to him for this government for doing this to him. That's what I would like to be able to say to him is, I apologize for my government. I apologize for George Bush not stepping up to the plate to help you. That's all I would say to him. Because if it wasn't for brave men like your son, frankly, the wolves would overtake all of us, Vicky. And God bless you for having produced such an American hero. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he gets that car, the clothing, maybe a job. There's probably listeners to this show right now, Vicky, who would like to offer your son much more than I can. And I'm sure you'll hear from them at defendmichael.com.
God bless you for being so supportive of him. I mean, it just warms my heart. And there have been so many people that have been so generous to him already. And I just appreciate everything that you have done.
Well, I didn't do it for me. I did it for you. I can't imagine what toll it's taken on you, Vicky. Look, America knows the truth, and how this miracle occurred is really in God's hands. I don't know what made the Army finally come to its senses, but let's all hold our breath and look forward to the day that Michael Behenna can be back with you and his girlfriend and, his family, and maybe join us on the Savage Nation. That's the least important part of that statement.
No, it would be wonderful. I look for that day, hopefully soon.
Vicky Behenna, again, if you want to help Michael Behenna put his life back together again after this grave injustice that was done to him by the Bush administration, The website is www.defendmichael.com. Vicky Behenna, God bless you, and thank you for giving America a true American hero.
Well, and thank you for telling Michael's story.
Okay, we'll keep doing it. It is 44 minutes after the hour. I got to tell you, that was quite a touching interview with the mother of this young man. Can you imagine, if you're a mother, if your son had lived through something like this? Can you imagine? And we're not talking about an ordinary criminal case, of which there probably are many in this country, of people falsely accused. We are talking about wartime, in a war zone, an American hero, an American Army Ranger who stood up to this piece of garbage, this Islamofascist who was trying to kill him, and shot him in a struggle because he was strong enough to do so and had the presence of mind. The cops in this country go through this on a daily basis. The police in this country face the very same situation. Transporting these animals, let us say, to holding cells or to prisons, their lives are in danger. And so if one of these animals gets loose from the cage and attacks the policeman now blinks and thinks twice about shooting him dead for fear the very same thing will happen to him that happened to many other police and to Lieutenant Behenna. This is all as a result of the mental disorder known as liberalism, which is killing all of us.